All right, welcome back to Best Hour of Their Day. We have the owner of Mossy Creek CrossFit, Jamison Price. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So, Jamison, you are one of those people that took us up on our offer whenever we're like, hey, hit us
Yeah,
up. You did it. And we get a lot of
yeah,
people. And Fern and I were just talking yesterday how some of our best episodes are just people that own a
yeah.
box or coach, and you want to talk about it because this show is really for all CrossFitters, but specifically box owners, coaches, and what better place is there to get ideas and best practices than from people doing it well. So
Yeah,
we're excited
absolutely.
to have you.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you were saying near Cookville, near
hmm
all the champs are basically. How far are you from there?
We are like right at 2 hours away from Cookville. So we are in a really saturated area for really competitive people. So, because I think Chase Hill, who is on Mayhem Independence, owns a box like in Knoxville area. So he's like in between us. So we got a bunch of competitors around here. So it's pretty dense area for CrossFit. We're the only box like within kind of out in our area, but once you get into Knoxville, it's pretty dense with affiliates.
So the culture and vibe of the competitiveness of CrossFit,
Mm,
it's is it really expanding that far? In other words, typically it'd be like, oh, well, this box is competitive, this one isn't. But when you're 2 hours
sure.
from, Froning, Fraser, Tia,
Mm.
is it just like the entire state becomes competitive?
I think it's the case where if you think back into just regionals times, where I guess we were like I think Central East regional.
Yeah,
Uh, it would be the case where if you were to do the open, like as a member of Moss Creek CrossFit, and you looked up our exact leaderboard for our region, like the first names were Matt Fraser and Rich Froning and the whole Mayhem crew. And so I think that's a little bit embedded and kind of integrated into our culture because it's like, man, this is what are we supposed to do? Like, might as well just go ahead and knock off the first 20 spots because it's going to be those guys. And so I think like it has kind of ingrained itself as a excessively competitive area. But I mean, it's just kind of part of overall culture anyways, being very like celebrity obsessed in a sense. But honestly, I think the guys at Mayhem do an excellent job being really down to earth about it. And so they make themselves pretty accessible as well. So they've just had a really great impact kind of in our region, just for the sake of CrossFit, even outside of the competitive nature of it. So they're connected and engaged and helpful for sure.
yeah. I mean, I was at the Central East Regional. Man, it must have been like 2012 or 2013, and I think the time they had 3 spots, and that
Yeah.
year, because of previous winners and they backfilled to like 6. It was like Froning, Bailey, um,
Yeah.
I don't even remember who else
Yeah.
went, but
Exactly.
it was a big time crew. I noticed you got some
Yeah.
Whiteboard Daily pictures back there. Shout out to our
Yeah,
friend
man.
Carl.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got some stuff we made, like those colorful ones are ones we made for our gym, and then got some Whiteboard Daily stuff up there as well. So
Well,
inspirational.
yeah, it's great. So let's dive into it. You had reached out to us, and part of what we were talking about is just the vibe and the culture of CrossFit. And I think, one of the challenges when it comes to running a successful affiliate, and we get asked all the time, hey, how do you run a good box? And I think people want like, oh, here's your checklist, go fill this out and come back when it's done. Like schedule,
Yeah.
obviously amidst the pandemic, some things have changed, but it's like, hey, run these classes at this time, use this programming, cap classes at this, here's your equipment list.
Right.
But
Yeah.
inevitably, when someone asks myself or Fern, it's like, oh, give your members the best hour of their day. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah.
no. Tell me what to do. And I'm like, I
Right.
just did. But how
Right.
the challenge there is, you know, completely opposed to CrossFit, which we say is measurable, observable, and repeatable.
hmm
That's not often measurable. It's
Right.
observable. Like we can tell when you're doing it, and it's repeatable if you do it right.
Right.
But it sounds to
Right.
me like you guys at Mossy Creek have come up with a way to actually make this measurable.
Yeah, absolutely. And because what you're like kind of speaking to are almost like the intangibles of culture,
Exactly.
like how you walk in and you're like, oh, this is more than, your cliche thrusters and burpees or whatever. That's just kind of what we say, I guess. Like, this is more than just the product of CrossFit. There's something about this that makes me really, really want to be a part of it. And I mean, to your point, like one of our core principles that we essentially measure by is best hour of the day. Like that's ingrained in our culture as like one of the primary targets of our coaches. And then in our coaches evaluation process, we have like scaling 1 out of 10 ways that we want to measure, did you give them the best hour of their day? And so like, that's just kind of one piece that's kind of built into what we're calling the affiliate operating system. And so for full transparency, this was built from inspiration I gained out of doing the immersion course at CF&E with Bergeron and Morgan up there. And so it was a really great experience. And if you got the money to do it and the time to do it, obviously that's not happening anytime soon. Nobody's traveling to Boston right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if they're still doing it for one, but certainly I don't know if they're running it now.
Yeah, definitely not now. But I gained a lot of really valuable experience from that because I had just made a huge transition into box ownership full time. So I was like really hungry to get as much as I could out of it. And so this is kind of what I garnered from that. Came back and went, we got to build this thing. We got to build this system out because we have the passion for the product. We do have the culture, but we don't have the systems in place that kind of uphold and support the whole thing. And so the AOS, put simply, is currently we're at draft 2, printed draft 2 that all of our coaches and staff and everybody have, and it's 45 pages long. And it is.
Is this something you're willing to share with the listeners?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. We'll figure out a way to get that to them.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. That's kind of the whole goal, is going. Only the reality that only 3% of CrossFit affiliates report annual profitability. And most of those don't even pay their owner a salary. And just going like, the issue, I think, is not so much that CrossFit is not a profitable business model. I think the affiliate is definitely a profitable business model. I think it's the fact that we have maybe less than 15 now, but nearly 15,000 affiliate owners around the world that are unbelievably passionate about the product, but aren't business owners. They're not entrepreneurs. They don't understand the systems, but like they're all passionate, great coaches. And to that point, CrossFit's whole thing up until now, conveniently, I think, CrossFit's whole thing has been really empowering the coach, training the coach. The L1, the L2, like those have been my experience so far, studying for the L3 exam. Those have all been really cool and really amazing experiences. And I've made unbelievable connections at those, but those are all empowering the coach, not necessarily the affiliate owner. And so my passion is going, hey, I think our passion for this product is worth it being a career, not just a hobby. So like affiliates can be profitable. This thing can be a full-time job. It just requires the same approach as all businesses, which is we got to kind of figure out how to systemize the thing while making sure that we're not getting away from our culture by admiring or valuing the systems over the product and over the culture. So that's what the kind of the vision for this whole AOS thing is. It's going like, man, all I want to do is coach people and help people change their lives, but bathrooms have to get cleaned and memberships have to get managed and all of the day-to-day details have to happen. And people need to have the best hour of their day. And so how do we make, like you said, all that measurable? And so this kind of AOS booklet is our vision at making it all measurable. So I don't really know in conversation how to get into all of it because it's so, I mean, in this AOS, we have like our core processes for how we coach classes, as well as how we stock the Fit Aid fridge and clean the bathrooms. So it's pretty fast in terms of how stuff happens. So I don't know if the best way is like.
Well, let me ask you a few background questions about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you open Mossy Creek?
So we are actually, as Mossy Creek CrossFit, about to celebrate 2 years of affiliation. We have been kind of this gym has been in existence in some capacity for about 5 years. I took over with a partner, took over ownership of it 2 years ago, changed the name, reaffiliated, moved into a new space and all that. So our affiliates has existed for about 5, but under the Mossy Creek CrossFit banner we're about to celebrate 2 years next week, actually.
You say reaffiliated, so wasn't it affiliated at one point? At some point, the previous owners.
Correct. Yeah.
And so what caused you to say, okay, I'm going to take over. I want it to be an affiliate again?
So we were, myself and my business partner now, who own this affiliate, were basically managing it for the previous owner, who was a businessman, traveled a lot, but was pretty hands off. Gave us a ton of freedom with it, and it was just stage of life kind of phased from one to another, where it just didn't make sense anymore for us to have our hands on it so much without having ownership over it. So not a hostile thing at all, but just a transition to another, and he ended up moving anyways. And it was simpler and cleaner for us just to go, you know what, we want to move spaces. We don't want to use this old equipment. We're just going to start from kind of brand new. So we renovated a new space. We financed from Rogue brand new equipment. And thankfully, we were able to take a bit more risk with that, because we weren't necessarily a startup, because we knew we had a membership base coming with us as we made this transition. So we shut the old one down. We were closed for about 2 months. We offered free boot camp classes on a college campus for 2 months while we were renovating our new space. Moved into our new space about 2 years ago, and have just been kind of running it since then.
So in that time, when did you realize, all right, we need to create some sort of manual?
I think I realized that when I started coaching at the first box, because I was always frustrated with like the small nuances, that like the inconsistencies between people's experiences from one class to another, based on they got one experience with this coach and one experience with this coach, or even like time of day. Like really simply, the morning classes got cleaner floors because the evening classes, you know, they got cleaned at night and that was it, you know? And so I noticed those little kind of nuanced things previously. And I noticed that, man, if the owner just didn't walk around the gym all the time with like their eyes open for what to address and what needed to be done, then like stuff wouldn't ever get done. And so I think I noticed it then.
What do you think caused you to be the type of coach that noticed that?
I think just maybe like my role in the organization is more of the like visionary kind of esque role. And so
even when you were just a coach?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's kind of where I have leaned into in all of my roles and positions that I've had. At the time that I was just a coach, I was working a full-time job as well. And so I've been balancing that whole thing for 5 years, I guess, between like towing the line between CrossFit being my vocation rather than just my passion and hobby, and feeling kind of like my hands were tied behind my back, of going, man, CrossFit and really changing people's lives and investing into people in that capacity is what I want to do, but it's just not a full-time job. That's just what I was telling myself that. And I was really like kind of debilitated by that in a sense. And so I was working a full-time job while doing that, but I was frustrated all the time because all I had capacity for was coaching a class, while all of these like other external pressures around me were frustrating me because I couldn't fix this or fix that or fix that. And so there was no delegation, there was no system, there was no process, really anything other than come in, hit the WOD, don't prepare really at all for like, don't have any like lesson plan prepared or anything like that. Just come in, hit the WOD, be kind to people, because that's, always been part of our culture. You know, try to like excite people and encourage people, but there was nothing like measurable to it. And so it really felt like we were constantly tripping from one thing to the next, which was really frustrating for me.
So with that frustration, you eventually decide to become the owner, partner up with someone, and you realize, okay, I need to create some sort of handbook so future coaches aren't frustrated, but also probably now that you're the owner, that you're not frustrated with your coaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
what was the first thing you decided to document in that book?
So the first thing that we decided to do was our accountability chart for our organization, which was who in the world fills what role. And so rather than like the organizational system of like a flow chart of going CEO, director of operations, director of this or whatever it was, all right, what needs to get done and who wants to do that? And so we sat down and had those conversations. My business partner and I sat down, and then the other people kind of that are a little bit more senior level leadership with us that have kind of that caliber and that passion sat down, and we just said, hey, what needs to happen here to give people the best hour of the day? And like, it was we kind of measured it by the 4-box grid of what are you good at, what do you love, all the way down to what are you bad at and what do you hate. And so we did the delegate and elevate thing, as well as the like, what do you really understand as an individual? What do you have the capacity to do and the skill to do as an individual? So we started building out our organizational chart from there, just to know, all right, who does what, and then who holds each other accountable for that. So that was first, and then quickly followed by our member experience, the whole vibe aspect of things. We're going, we know what we want people's experience to be from the second they pull into the parking lot to the second to when they leave. How do we structure that? How do we spell that out? How do we systemize that and create a sense of expectation around that? Communicate that to our coaches, communicate that to our staff. So that in of itself is probably like the vibe portion of our document is probably about 3 pages long. That's just like, hey, this is the athlete experience. And then the second half of it is, this is the staff experience. So this is what it means, not just to be an athlete here, to be a member here, but this is what it means to work here, because it's really important to me as a leader in this organization that even if it's been a part-time job for somebody, that like 15 years from now, somebody who used to work 6 classes a week for us looks back and goes, man, I learned the most working at Mossy Creek CrossFit in this small little town in East Tennessee. Or man, my favorite job I've ever had, because there was just something special about it, was at Mossy Creek CrossFit in East Tennessee. And so, we wanted to spell that out too, going best hour of the day for the staff as well. How do we empower them and enable them to do their best work? So those were probably the 2 primary things that we built out first.
So you mentioned as a box owner, making sure your coaches do things they enjoy.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, things need to get done. It's not high on someone's list. Like, oh, I hope I get to be the guy that, scrubs the floors every night. Right. So
right.
what was the task that people wanted the least?
Task that people wanted the least. I would say that it seemed that people did not want to be controlled in their ability to coach their classes. So it was trying to find and like finesse really well this sense of expectation and requirement for them, while also giving them total freedom to be themselves in the class. So I think that maybe, I don't know if that answers the question, but that was kind of our pushback, is going like, our first step, we gave them a completely spelled out template from like from minute 0 to minute 60. This is what you do. And it was really rigid, and it didn't provide a lot of freedom for the coaches to be themselves. So there was pushback there. And so we've kind of iterated it into multiple different versions to where now it's going, all right, these are the coaches' expectations, but the coach has a lot of freedom to kind of bring their own flavor to every class. So yeah, they definitely didn't want to be micromanaged, in a sense, I guess, in their ability to actually just coach classes and engage with people. It started feeling very pragmatic, I guess, or even robotic in a sense to them at first.
So what are some things you were able to do to allow a coach to basically run the same workout, whether it's 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., but have the freedom to make it their own class?
Yeah. So we basically have, so all of our, what we call all of our procedures are basically our core processes. So under our coaching core processes, we have a class procedures. So it's a 2-page document. The front page is that very detailed we walk through the general warm-up, the specific warm-up, the workout, the cool down, the expectations for each of those, the times assigned for each of those. And then what we've done is take the aspects, the very CrossFit-esque aspects of coaching, which is teach, see, correct, manage, demonstrate, presence, and attitude. We've taken all of those things and we have integrated those into each area. So basically said, hey, in the general warm-up, we want you focused on presence and attitude, managing and teaching. Focus on those primary things. When you move to the specific warm-up, we want you focused on demonstration, teaching, seeing, and correcting. During the workout, and for the most part, it's all of them at all times, but it's trying to take it and narrow it down and aim a little bit smaller for them to go, all right, in the general warm-up, what do I need to be aware of? My presence and attitude first and foremost. And so like we say, our first and foremost focus is to welcome well. The second somebody walks in the room, even if they are late, you do not say, hey, you're late. Like, you welcome somebody well. If you got to have a conversation with a chronically late member on the side, fine, but don't kill the vibe of the class if somebody walks in 2 minutes late. So like everybody gets welcomed well, and that's presence.
So for example, that's in the 3 pages of your book, and it says welcome well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you measure that? Do you ever give feedback on that specific piece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of our it's my wife actually fills the role of our member services, and she gets feedback on a coach. Every coach gets feedback once a week from a class that they coach. She will look at so we use Wodify. She'll look at the Wodify coach board, and she will text every single athlete that came to that class and ask for actionable, anonymous, of course, feedback for that coach on that class. And so one of our coaches, his name's Thaddeus. And so she'll send out a text and say, hey, how was your 4:30 p.m. class experience with Thaddeus? We know that you love him. That's great, but we really need some actionable feedback. This is for him to get better so that you guys can keep getting better. So every coach gets that every single week.
So once a week, every coach is getting feed. That's pretty impressive. How many coaches do you have?
So we have, counting the owner and I, my business partner, the other owner, and I, we have 8 coaches. So it's he and I and 6 others.
Do you and your partner get feedback?
We do. Yeah. Which
Weekly?
has been fun. Yeah. So, and that's really been a huge thing for us, is creating this feedback loop that has been both challenging, but also really rewarding. So our member services role is my wife gets the feedback from the athletes, and then our coaches are paid to evaluate one another with our coaches evaluation form that we have. They're paid to evaluate one another once a month. And then my business partner and I evaluate all of our coaches once a month, including us. So every coach is getting evaluated by each other, getting evaluated by us, and getting evaluated and getting feedback from members every month. And then my business partner, his name's Scooter. I'll just use his name. He fills the role of our head coach. So I'm more like visionary kind of operations, and then he's our head coach. And so part of his position and his job is he sits down in one-on-one meetings with our coaches every month. So that was back in January when we implemented all of this. It was a significant investment to go, all right, now we're not just paying coaches to coach classes. We're paying them all once a month to come into a class they're not coaching to evaluate another coach. And we're paying them once a month to meet with Scooter one-on-one for their one-on-one eval, where he goes over all the feedback and gives them something actionable. And we pay them once a month to all gather together for our coaches meeting. So it was like, do we really can we swing this? And at the moment, honestly, we really couldn't. And it required us to give up some other things, or for Scooter and I to step in to take to absorb some costs, some operating costs off of some other stuff. But it was absolutely worth it. And to your point, man, that was one of the things of, this gives people the best hour of their day. And this is a better investment than any marketing strategy we could ever come up with. This is better than friggin' Facebook paid marketing or a 6 weeks challenge. This is giving people the best hour of their day, and it's bringing people in. So yeah, that's kind of our feedback system with the coaches that we came up with.
And
And
are you paying them their standard salary, the same that they would get paid for that class?
for their evals.
For whether it's they're watching or
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you're really giving up, I mean, call it 6 other coaches, 18 additional hours of pay
right.
simply in feedback.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
important. I mean, the handbook sounds phenomenal and still
Yeah.
want to talk a little more about that. But you mean, step number one is you have to be willing to make that investment in your coach's development.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for me, I tend to lean into the idea and the mentality that as an organizational leader, as a leader of any kind, your team is the most important. Everybody's like, well, customer's always right, customer first. Yeah, maybe. And of course, in our industry, the customer matters greatly because for us, they're not customers, they're community and their family. And so it's important, of course, but we serve them best by first serving our team. And so like one of the things that we want to do is figure out how to like reward the fact that our coaches do well also. And so we're trying right now to build out this, almost because we do have so much feedback now every month that it's like, there is a way to measure this to where our coaches could actually compete. So we're implementing now what we're calling a coaches growth competition. So it's basically a way to find the coach of the month. And so it's basically going, hey, you get points for how you do on all this feedback. And the coach with the most points at the end of the month, we will buy you whatever accessory you want. Or like RPM rope, we'll buy you knee sleeves, we'll buy you wrist wraps, we'll buy you whatever you want. This is like, and the same coach can win every month. And it's unfortunately can't be Scooter or I. So like there are 6 of you to compete with each other. Everybody's got the same fair chance. And so it's just this idea of going like, and in very CrossFit-esque fashion, you're only competing against yourself. It doesn't matter how well another coach does. You just have to do your best. And so I try to figure out a way to like reward that because part of our culture is very much like point to what's better. Don't punish first necessarily. But there's got to be some sort of accountability in place for being late to classes, missing classes, doing poorly on evaluations, straight up ignoring all of our cultural aspects that give people the best hour of their day. There's got to be some sort of accountability for that. So it's this idea of like, well, you lose points for that. And then, we have scorecards that we do as a staff and all of that as well. So there's so much like accountability and feedback for that kind of stuff, all pointed at that idea of making the biggest impact, giving people the best experience, like influencing, impacting, and engaging with people the absolute best we can. So I agree absolutely that that's one of the biggest things to figure out how to systemize is your coach's investment and your coach's development. Because if you say that like you want to make an impact in people's lives and have your gym be like a family and invest in the community, but you treat your coaches like trash, like that falls apart at its foundation, at that point. And so I think that our investment into our coaches has been one of the biggest turning points. And it may be getting out ahead of the conversation here, but to support your entire mentality of your business grows when you give people the best hour of their day. Since we reopened from quarantine due to coronavirus, we have added 24 athletes. We've been
How long have
open
you been? Go ahead.
7 weeks.
So you reopened 7 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
So
We
you
were
opened
open
pretty early.
Yeah, so we're kind of in an interesting spot here. So we were able to open for 7 weeks. I think we were closed for a total of 8 or 9 weeks. But yeah, we opened 7 weeks ago and people were excited to come back. Obviously we had to, maintain all the procedures and, but we were able to build a lot of this during quarantine, which was great. So they came back and all of a sudden stuff was obviously different because it's post-quarantine and people were pumped to be back, but they could tell something was different because we did a lot of this groundwork even during quarantine in terms of implementing this stuff. And what is the coolest thing about that? So adding 24 members in 7 weeks, we've never done before. And I want to say, we ran the report last week and I want to say that 20 of the 24 were friends of existing members who have been in our gym for 2 years. that all of the sudden decided to start bringing their friends. So it's like, we didn't market, we didn't get all of this new traction in the community in which like all these new people came. It was long-term, long-time members that could tell something was different, that were like, we got to bring our friends now. We got to bring people here. We want people to be a part of this. And it's not because our culture necessarily changed. It's because we were able to standardize it, make it measurable, like hold it accountable to give people that best hour of their day experience. And so like it just started working, and we didn't even we didn't really know that was going to happen. It was just, we knew we needed to do better, that our people deserved better, and that our team deserved better, and that we as business owners deserved to make a career out of this, not just a hobby. And then it just started working. Like all of a sudden the business started growing. And so that's been a really cool justification to, yeah, your 6 weeks challenges, that crap doesn't work. This is what changes people's lives. And people want to be a part of something that's special. This is the unique selling point. I think you guys even said it in your podcast. If everybody asks what's unique about you, your coaching and community, you got to have a way. You got to have a way to measure that if you're going to lean into it. So that's been a super cool experience for us, just to see it work in that way.
So I love it. Let's talk a little bit more about those 3 pages of your handbook. You mentioned the way you greet people. What are some of the other headlines or topics in that section that people should be thinking about when creating the best hour of their day? And of course, this is ignoring clean floors. This is ignoring beyond time, but very specific things.
Yeah. So one of our roles in our organization is our communications role. And we kind of put that person particularly over the responsibility of the vibe. We say like it's the feel or the spirit of Mossy Creek CrossFit. And to do that, they were basically saying, well, you got to engage all of the senses, like at that point. And so it really does matter, like how it sounds and looks and all of that kind of stuff. And so like to your point, all that stuff is important, but people are very willing to overlook a dirty floor or a bathroom without paper towels if it feels like family in the room. And so I think the most important thing, and I guess backtracking a little bit to a question you asked earlier, the most important thing in that are your core values. And I suppose that's what we actually built out first, but those were already done when we started this kind of handbook. And so I wasn't really even considering that as our first step. But yeah, man, I think in our vibe, it's absolutely going toe to toe with everything that is counterintuitive to your core values. And so for us, our core values are humility, and we have a description of what that means, positivity, description, and excellence, description of what that means. And so those are our core values, and everything that we want to do lives into those core values with as much aggression as necessary. And so I think that in our vibe, it's essentially making all of it measurable based on, you got to nail the humility, you got to nail the positivity, and you got to nail the excellence. And when we do that, people notice. And especially with humility being first, that means like, okay, eyes off you and on to them. Whenever. How
do you take something like that and measure it though?
So I think it's important to know what it means for you. And so for us, our basic lines of humility are, don't think less of yourself, think of yourself less, don't complain, don't make excuses, look for wins in every situation, and then excellence is excellence. So making those measurable is difficult, but because it is still intangible in a sense, but I think you have to ask the questions often. And that's what we've started doing, is in these evaluations or in these scorecards that we have, the measurement that we use is nail it. Are you nailing it? Are you getting it? Or are you missing it? And at some point it's just going, hey, just even saying to Scooter, like, hey man, I've seen you kind of miss the positivity this week as we evaluate each other in our staff meetings. And why is that? Or he's able to say to me, hey, like, we have core processes for coaching classes, and you didn't wipe the equipment down, and you didn't put everything back where it was supposed to go, and we can't uphold excellence if you're not willing to do it yourself. And so it is in those minute details that require all the accountability.
No, and what you're saying is true. So the question I would have is, some of those things are very objective, right? Hey,
Sure.
class ended,
Yeah.
you didn't wipe that down. Black and
Yeah.
white, I saw it. Have you
Yeah.
ever had a time where, whether it's Scooter or one of your other coaches, and you're like, hey, you weren't bringing the positivity, and he's like, yeah, I was. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, because
how do you measure that, right?
Right.
And from person to person.
Say that one more time. You were breaking up.
No, because I think we were saying the same thing, because it varies from person to person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because just to be straight up, in our coaches meeting last week during the teaching portion, we were talking about like coaching with optimism. And I'm not a naturally optimistic person, and which is frustrating, I guess. But like, I think Scooter is, and our coaching staff is probably split half and half between, like, we got some really like optimistic people, and then we've got the people who say they're realists but are just straight up pessimists. They just get away with it by saying they're realists. And so I think that is part of just knowing your team. Like, it's part of putting your team first, and being able to walk through life with your coaches in a really like open, humble way that says, hey, I know that you may be the kind of guy that just like, you're on cruise control all the time, and that's cool. But the members need you to be excited about what you're sharing, or they're not going to be excited to learn it. Like, if you're not bringing a sense of excitement that they can see, a sense of excitement that they can gain from, they're not going to be excited to learn what you're teaching. Even if you think you're excited about it, you got to step it up. And so I think that it's not trying to make, so Scooter is a high caliber, high charisma dude, and I can't match his charisma, even though I care so much about the people in the room. So it's not even about making me like him as much as elevating me to be the best version of my personality in those classes, which takes a lot of intangible investment into people. And so it's the whole like coaching development concept, or people development concept, of like treating people like they have emotional bank accounts, and just going, man, we got to deposit constantly into our coaches' emotional bank accounts, so that when it's time to say, hey, I know that you're kind of a low energy dude, but come on, like, it's not taken offensively, because we've deposited so much and there's so much equity there for him to go, okay, I get it. Like, it's okay. Because we have one coach who it's not necessarily even an energy issue. The dude's just quiet. And the first like 3 months he was coaching, it was just like, too quiet, man. You're too quiet. You're too quiet. And so even just those small actionable things of going like, hey, I know it's not necessarily because you're bored, but you got to bring the volume up in order to kind of add to some charisma in the room, bring up some energy in the room. And so those little actionable things make a difference. But if that's the first conversation you've had with your coach in like 2 months, then he's going to take that offensively because you haven't been investing into him. And so I don't really know if that answers the question. I think the frustrating part is it doesn't feel like there necessarily is an answer to systemize everything, because at some point what we're talking about here is the intangible spirit of and like DNA of your organization, the DNA of your gym, like just kind of the spirit that flows through it. Because I'm inclined to believe that our gym is a living, breathing thing. And at some point it's like, pump it full of the system, pump it full of the structure, make it run, make it smooth, oil it up, but then like treat it with care, because like there is a spirit to your organization. And I think for me, like so my full-time job was in full-time ministry. I was a student and college pastor for a while. I did worship ministry for a while. And that is one of the hardest industries ever to do exactly what you're talking about, like systemize actionable care for people. And so I've been wrestling with that for so long. But I have the same mentality in the gym too. And so like for me, it's all about being missional, bringing like that spirit into the space. And so this 45-page book currently is my best attempt at structuring it so that I'm free to like lean into like the soul of our gym, the spirit of our gym, so it can make an impact in people's lives. But I do think it's hard because there are still some frustrating intangibles, some frustrating things that like, well, dude, that's just people. You can't systemize everybody. Like there's a certain weakness to it at a point.
It's one of those things where it's hard to measure, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you feel it too. Like, yeah,
So,
for sure.
so let's
And
take
people who don't, yeah.
take that quiet guy. Were you able to turn him around? Were you able to see a change in him? Were you able to see that change in your coach that was quiet, and did it make a big difference in his coaching ability?
Yeah. Yes, I would say the conversation I had and the conversation that Scooter had with him about being louder was not the thing that made a difference. It was much more providing a sense of community and family for him that made a difference, that made him go, I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone because I want to be a part of what we're building here together. It was an investment into him, creating a sense of community for him to where it felt like he was able to now take ownership of this. And that's what compelled him to get better. It wasn't because we asked. It was because there was a sense of connection and ownership he started to take over it. And so I think that's what makes the biggest difference, is just continuing to invest into people and make them the most important thing. So best hour of the day for the staff as well as the members. So, but he was much more receptive, and our entire team is much more receptive to receiving feedback because they know we care. Like, and it's because they know we care about them, not that we care that they make us more money.
I think that is probably the key to all of this. I mean, yeah. I think what you've created is phenomenal. I think it's ideal. I think anyone that's listening that's a box owner needs to get their hands on it, and we'll figure out the way to do that. But yeah, and that goes for all feedback, whether it's very black and white or not, right? Like you said you're married. It's like, hey, honey, you didn't take out the garbage. If that's your only communication for the day, you haven't made those deposits.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's much more easy for someone to digest when they're like, oh, he's coming from a good place. You know, he's just asking because he cares and he doesn't want a dirty kitchen, or whatever the case is. And I think, like you said, you're doing the same thing. You're not saying, hey, you're quiet, you're a bad person, etc. You're saying, hey, you're quiet, we're investing in you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the hard but rewarding part of this, is just to like, man, you can't create a sense of, you can't systemize genuine care. And I mean, I know obviously this wasn't like the main topic I guess we were going to have the conversation about today, but I think it is the most important thing. We were able to get our coaches some gifts recently, just to say like, hey, it's been a tough 2 years. You guys have been above and beyond and more than we've asked. And we were able this year to take a ton of positive strides in our gym. So we paid off all of our investor debt, and we paid off all of our rogue financing for all of our equipment. And like, we just kind of like felt like we could start to breathe again, even financially as a business. And so first thing we wanted to do with those funds that we freed up is to just like thank our coaches. And so we were able to get them all like a gift, and just kind of wrote them a note as we gave it to them. And so we like got them an RPM rope or custom knee sleeves or something like that. And so with one of our coaches, she is not high energy. She's not high charisma. She is in school for kinesiology right now. And so she's sharp, but you wouldn't even know she's that sharp because she's not like boastful about it. She's an L1, like good athlete too, but she's just quieter, more like reserved. That's just her personality. But when you watch, you can see it. It's the intangible, just significant, sincere care. It's quieter, than most. It's less bubbly and positive than most, but man, it is so significant and so sincere. And so like, that's just what I wrote in the card. I was like, I don't really know what else to say other than like, I know that sometimes all the things we're trying to do to systemize things around here can be tough. I know that what we're trying to do to create structure can be tough, but you can't systemize and you can't structure just caring for people. And if you've got it, you got it, and she's got it. So we don't want to lose that. So I would say for anybody looking to like systemize anything, man, don't freaking choke the life out of the genuine nature of your culture. Like, don't choke the opportunity and like just put a stranglehold on just valuing people first. And because like you said, man, when you have it, you have it. And people know whenever you say their name 3 times because it's written in a book for you to say their name 3 times in a class versus when you say their name 3 times because you just care about them, you know? And we see that too all the time. And so that's kind of been my fear is of trying to balance this and going like, dude, don't just do it because it's in the book. Do it because you really care about and love these people, you know? Do it because you want to see them not just stay out of the nursing home long term, but you want to see them thrive in life. Like, so it's just finding that balance, I think, has been tough, but it has been really rewarding at the same time.
No, I love it. I think that, you know, as with most things in life, putting it down on paper, making it black and white is always helpful. But yeah, you know, I think what we're getting to in the root of it is you can definitely help steer people in the right direction. You can definitely help give them a guideline, you know, a compass. Ultimately, it's still going to be hard to measure, but if you don't have it written down and you don't talk to them, and it sounds like most importantly, you don't invest in your coaches. I mean, that's really what I'm gathering from you, whether it's all of the evaluations, the gifts you're giving, you know, the positive deposits into their emotional bank. That's what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to get my hands on it, and then, you know, we'll make sure if someone's listening, if they share it, you know, make sure you give Jamison and Mossy Creek a shout out. Don't just take it, slap your box name on it. I mean, I don't think you particularly care, but I think that's really important. So
yeah, no, I'd love to have that conversation with anybody, man, and just build this thing out together in a sense of how we can best serve people. I know the big vision for this would be like make something like this as valuable to the owner as the L1 is to the coach. You know, to standardize something that like the community can appreciate together. And I think right now is a great time from HQ down to put value on this kind of stuff. So for sure.
Love it, Jamison. This has been interesting. It's really great. I'll hit you up offline and get a copy of that. And if people want to find you, is it just Mossy Creek CrossFit on social media?
So social media is Mossy Creek Fitness. My Instagram is just Jamison Price, not like the whiskey, spelled with an I, not an E. So.
Oh, interesting. And you said it was Mossy Creek Fitness on Instagram.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. What made you go into box ownership rather than ministry?
It felt like I could make a more significant missional impact in the box than on Sunday mornings. And I know that's a loaded statement, and it's just personal for me. It's not meant to be political. It's just I grew up on the mission field. My dad's been a pastor. And so for me, ministry has looked a lot more like apprenticeship, just trying to be like Jesus and be a disciple. And I could do that. What crystallized it for me was just, you know what, I'm supposed to wake up every day like a missionary, and I'm going to do that at the box, and I'm going to do that. And so we've kind of got vision for our whole small town here to just make a bigger impact. So we're kind of embedded into a historical downtown here in Jefferson City. And we want to be a part of renovating and restoring kind of the life to downtown. And that feels like a really important work for me. It feels like the Lord has called me and my wife to do together. And CrossFit from day one has felt like the tool to do it. And I think it is unique. So I know it is a loaded statement, and I'm not saying that that ministry is not worthwhile. You're
not saying fitness is more important than ministry. Burpees are better than church.
I'm not saying that.
But you're saying you could do just as good a job in front of a group of people exercising as you can a group of people sitting in pews.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I began to struggle to recognize the eternal value I was able to make standing on the stage on a Sunday morning, but I don't struggle at all to see the eternal value when I stand in front of people in a class.
It's all
And that's personal.
it's all the same. All
It
you're
is.
trying to do is make people happier, healthier, better
Yeah.
human beings. And like you said
Absolutely.
earlier on, just being kind to one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could do that through thrusters, or you can do that through reading Bible passages, I'm sure.
Yeah, one of those may be easier.
It depends who you're talking to, I suppose.
That's true. That's true.
But it was really great talking to you about this. I'm going to shoot you an email when we get off, but
yeah,
really great having you on. And as
absolutely.
people are interested, maybe we'll have you back on for a Q&A about it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Obviously, we didn't really talk about the details of the book, which is great. I love the topic that we got into. So any way that I can be helpful, that'd be awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat as well.
Well, thanks, Jamison. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.